And breaking news coming in, the Supreme Court panel on the judge in scandal after the law intern case has indicted Justice A.K. Ganguly, saying prima facie there is evidence against the former judge A.K. Ganguly. That's the latest coming in. Remember, there has been a mixed reaction till now to whether former Supreme Court judge Justice A.K. Ganguly, who's facing allegations of sexually harassing a law intern, must resign as the chairman of the West Bengal Human Rights Commission. There were also questions being asked that when the committee that had been set up by the Supreme Court to look into allegations that had been made by the law intern, when it revealed the name of Justice A.K. Ganguly, why weren't the details of what had been said during the probe and the final findings of the probe report being made public? There were also questions being raised on why there has not been an FIR prima facie or suo motu rather been registered against Justice A.K. Ganguly, the man on your screens. He is also at this point the chairman of the West Bengal Human Rights Commission, and there has been a demand for Justice A.K. Ganguly to step down under the light of these serious allegations of sexual harassment against him. The demand for resignation has been coming primarily from BJP leader Sushma Swaraj, who tweeted a day ago saying that she strongly felt that Justice A.K. Ganguly should resign as chairman of the West Bengal Human Rights Commission. Not only Caesar's wife, but Caesar too must be above suspicion, is the line that Sushma Swaraj had written. But like I said, there have been mixed reactions as far as Justice A.K. Ganguly is concerned. Former Attorney General of India Soli Sorabji defended the retired Apex Court judge by saying his resignation would set a bad precedent. Jaskirat is joining us on the story. Jaskirat, there's an indication coming that there might be prima facie evidence against A.K. Ganguly. What are the details that you have?
The Chief Justice of India has just made public his findings of the note that was submitted to him by the Supreme Court panel that was set up by the Chief Justice P. Satyasivam himself to look into the allegation by the law intern. If I could just quote him on the note that he has in fact now sent out and made public, that considering the fact that the said intern was not an intern on the rolls of the Supreme Court, and that the concerned judge, which is now Justice Ganguly, had already demitted, which is retired from his office on account of superannuation on the date of the incident, which means that they have acknowledged that an incident in fact did take place. The Chief Justice of India has said that no further follow-up action is required in this particular case and has put out this report over here in the public domain.
What exactly does that mean, that no further action is required? Please explain, Jaskirat.
Well, what we were expecting is that at least the Supreme Court panel, had it found any such incident having taken place, would have directed the police authorities or the executive to take action. However, the Supreme Court panel within its ambit has now decided that they're only looking at it from an administrative point of view. Now we have to also understand that the person over here who had made the allegations, that law intern and now a lawyer, had also refrained from or has she's not inclined to take this into a criminal complaint matter. So really, even if the police were to go ahead and register an FIR, which they can because it's a cognizable offence, they would be very heavily relying on the victim's statement herself. So in the absence of that statement also coming in, this case could fall flat and a closure report would inevitably have to be filed. Now that's just one of the scenarios. So as far as the Supreme Court's administrative panel headed by Justice Lodha, including Justice Ranjana Desai and Justice Dattu is concerned, they have said that from their side no further action can be taken. They are implying to say that had this been a sitting judge of the Supreme Court and had this been an intern of a sitting judge of the Supreme Court, and even then had this incident taken place within or without the premises of the Supreme Court, they could have still perhaps considered to take an action. But over here, they have refrained from doing any such thing.
Okay, so as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, they're not going to take any direct action. But the very fact that they are saying that Justice Ganguly and that incident did occur, what does this mean for the former judge?
Well, what this really means is now that the fact that it is out in the public domain about the fact that the Supreme Court has also found the fact that the incident has taken place. They had spoken with the law intern on one occasion and then had a written representation from her on the second occasion. It is believed that they also got in a word from Justice Ganguly, who was in fact accused in this case. But then again, we have to understand that this was an administrative panel that was set up by the Supreme Court because there was a lot of, just to give our viewers a little perspective and understanding as to what were the circumstances under which this panel was set up. A lot of rumors were doing the rounds, many names cropped up, many names of serving and retired Supreme Court judges had cropped up. Attorney General brought it to the attention of the Chief Justice of India, and the Chief Justice said, I've already read the media reports. I'm very concerned because I'm the head of the institution. but I'm also concerned because a lot of reputations are at stake over here. It is well considering the fact that and in the absence of a name, a lot of other names were also doing their rounds in the legal circles and also in the public domain. So a lot of pressure was being created that the perpetrator's name should come out and the innocent should be left free, and their names should not be maligned in the forms of gossip and rumors. And that is the circumstance under which this panel was originally set up.
No, but Jaskirat, it's slightly surprising that by pulling, administrative details and technicalities into the whole issue, the Supreme Court, in a way, is almost letting off A.K. Ganguly and saying that he wasn't on the rolls. He was, by then, he was a former judge. The intern wasn't working for the Supreme Court, wasn't on the rolls of the Supreme Court, so it's not our matter. Is that what it is in basic layman terms?
But one could say that this is only the panel's report that has now been made public. The findings have been made public. Over here, they've also, in fact, named the person who had accused. So that name has also come out in the person who had made the allegation. So that has also come out in the public domain. But as far as this particular finding report is concerned, it seems that the Supreme Court is implying that from an administrative perspective, at least, it is something which is completely beyond their purview. So they have to respect the code also. Now, that does not mean that the police can't take this forward in the form of a cognizable offence. That is another system, a parallel system in itself. So there is no clampdown or someone stopping the police authorities of taking cognizance of this incident having taken place because the details are already out in the public domain and from taking further action. So as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, they have not really let's say put a spanner or put a speed breaker on those proceedings, but they have just you could say in a manner of saying, just drawn a line that this is the administrative, it was set up to look into it from the administrative point of view. Of course, there was a lot of, like I said before, rumors during the rounds.
No, but Jaskirat, correct me if I'm wrong. This panel was set up to look into these allegations of sexual harassment that had been made by a law intern. When did the probe panel become one that was going to look into administrative failure? What has administration got to do with a simple case of sexual harassment?
The Supreme Court has its own panel which is set up as per the Vishaka guidelines. Now, whenever an incident like this takes place and an allegation is made to find out the deliberation or to find out the culpability of the person who is accused, that is always, in the sense, any company for that matter, not just the Supreme Court, any organization, any industrial body which comes under, which has to have that kind of a panel under the Vishaka guidelines, they have to have an administrative setup which allows a particular committee to look into such allegations. So from that perspective, to find out the veracity, and I'm quoting the Chief Justice of India over here, when he had set up this panel and he had announced the names of the judges, he had said we need to look into the veracity of these allegations and we need to also find out who the person is. So of course they've taken care of that aspect where they found out the veracity of the allegations and found out the name of the judge. So going forward over here, now if at all the Supreme Court decides later, let's say tomorrow, to take suo motu cognizance and push forward the case, but that can only happen once let's say even the person who had made the allegations is also willing to take it forward. So it's a very grey area right now, and we're only expecting a further word from the law intern, now the lawyer, who had made this allegation, as to whether or not she would be pressing forward for a formal criminal complaint or not. In the absence of that, there really doesn't seem to be much happening except for the police taking cognizance of this.
Okay, Jaskirat, for our viewers who are joining us at this point, these are the details of the probe report that has come out after the Supreme Court appointed a special probe committee to look into allegations of sexual harassment that had been made by a law intern in a blog that was doing the rounds. There was no formal complaint made till now, and from the details that we are getting, Justice A.K. Ganguly, the former judge of the Supreme Court, has now been held responsible in the sense of being indicted. That the Supreme Court probe panel is saying that Justice Ganguly in fact did indulge in sexual harassment charges. Is that correct? Am I getting that part right, Jaskirat?
If I can read out the exact words from this,
yes.
The Supreme Court panel that submitted its report to the Chief Justice of India, I'm going to read out the excerpt from that panel's report now. We have carefully scrutinized the statement, written as well as oral, of the person who is accused. I'm not going to take the name here. The affidavits of the three witnesses and the statements of Justice A.K. Ganguly. It appears to the committee that the evening of 24th of December 2012, the said person, the accuser, who had in fact made the allegation, had visited the hotel where Justice Ganguly was staying to assist him in his work. The fact is not denied by Justice Ganguly, that fact that the person had visited him. Further, the committee is of the considered view that the statement of the person who had made the allegation, both written and oral, prima facie discloses an act of unwelcome behavior, in brackets unwelcome verbal, non-verbal conduct of sexual nature by Justice Ganguly with her in the room of Hotel Meridian on the 24th of December 2012. And like the initial blog entry which had sparked off this entire debate had pointed out, this was right at the height of the anti-gang rape protest in Delhi on the 24th of December 2012. So yes, prima facie, this panel has found a culpability on behalf of Justice Ganguly.
But they're not taking any action based on that culpability, based primarily on administrative details.
That is correct. That would be a good way to sum it up. They're based primarily perhaps on administrative limitations, or the fact that they are of the considered opinion in their own educated, because these are of course the Honorable Supreme Court judges of India. They are perhaps of the opinion that since it's already a cognizable offence and the details are out in the public domain, there is nothing stopping the police authorities to actually go forward over here.
So can't the Supreme Court within its own right take suo moto, not even suo moto cognizance in this case, but the very fact that they have found that Justice A.K. Ganguly, there's proof that Justice A.K. Ganguly and the allegations made against him are true. Is there any, just hold on, we have senior advocate Harish Salve on the phone line with us. Mr. Salve, what do you make of the Supreme Court report?
Well, the statesmanship of the Chief Justice, his institutional integrity has paid off. You today see a court, a committee of a court, believing the evidence of a young lady and few other witnesses over the evidence of one of their own, proving to the world that even where that institution is concerned, they abide by the faith that however high you may be, the law is above you. It is a great boost to the morale and courage of Indian women that doesn't matter however high the person is who misbehaves with you. If you have the courage to fight, the Supreme Court will be on your side. So I think it's a great thing. Now, legally, what they have done is the right thing. She unfortunately was not on the rolls when this happened. He is no longer a judge. So institutionally, they can do nothing beyond condemn him. And I don't think you need strong adjectives to condemn a person. Sometimes stating the truth itself is a huge condemnation. And as far as the law is concerned, the Delhi police should not take the law to its logical course.
Mr. Salve, for a lot of our viewers who want to understand the story better, with the Supreme Court saying that yes, Justice A.K. Ganguly has been indicted, the charges against him have been proven right, could the Supreme Court have gone a step further and ordered some action against him? Was that possible within the realms of the institution?
No, this was an administrative, this was an inquiry, internal inquiry, more like the administrative side. They did not entertain this matter on the judicial side. And I have always been against this, and I would still be against the Supreme Court entertaining this on the judicial side. He is no longer Justice Ganguly, where he was being tried. He was a citizen who had violated the rights of another citizen. His perception was hurt because it also impinged on the reputation of the institution. The report has vindicated the Supreme Court. Now the law will take its course. Now if the Supreme Court directs you take action against him, he is as good as convicted. He now has all the rights of a citizen of India who is, if tomorrow if he is accused of a criminal charge, he must have all the protection of the Criminal Procedure Court. And speaking for myself, I have always been against this overzealous monitored investigations by the court and the consequences it produces on the rights of the accused.
Harish Salve, former Solicitor General, thank you so much for speaking to Headlines today. We also have Sanjay Hegde on the phone line with us. Mr. Hegde, the Supreme Court panel has indicted Justice A.K. Ganguly. Your reactions?
Well, the Supreme Court panel, I would not use the word indicted. It has found material against Justice Ganguly and has expressed its disapproval. But beyond that, it has specifically declined to
Mr. Hegde, the words that have been used by the Supreme Court probe panel is unwelcome behavior.
Yes, unwelcome behavior. Now, unwelcome behavior is not a criminal charge. You can't frame a charge in a courtroom saying that your behavior is unwelcome. You have to frame a charge.
The nature of the charge, Mr. Hegre, was a sexual harassment charge.
Madam.
Yes.
Let me put the criminal law to you. The criminal law requires you to specify a section of the IPC and say that you have violated this. The unwelcome behavior is not any.
But this was within the realms of an administrative probe panel. This was not on the judicial side. The court was looking at it as an internal matter.
Exactly. Therefore, when you use the word indicted, that is what I took exception to.
Okay, fair enough.
So nobody is
But
indicted in that sense.
let me rephrase my question. Let me rephrase my question. The charge against Justice A.K. Ganguly has been found to be true by the probe panel that was put forth by the Supreme Court.
Yes, the probe panel has found that there was unwelcome behavior. It has essentially found some substance in the story which has been set out by the intern. Thereafter, the Supreme Court has also said that since the incident is something that has happened after the two people had ceased to have any connection with the Supreme Court, in as much as Justice Ganguly had retired and the intern had gone back to her law college and she was not a part of the Supreme Court anymore, the Supreme Court had no more jurisdiction.
Mr. Hegre, the Supreme Court probe panel is saying that they are bringing in the administrative details, and based on technicality, the Supreme Court probe panel is saying that the charges against Justice A.K. Ganguly have been found to be true. But since he was not a justice at that point, and neither was the law intern on the rolls of the Supreme Court, that's why we cannot initiate any action.
Yes.
Why are you trying to defend that Justice Ganguly hasn't done or been the perpetrator of the crime that he has been now found to be guilty of?
I am not defending Justice Ganguly. I am only taking the conduct of Mr. A.K. Ganguly, and like any other citizen of India, he is entitled to what is called due process. Due process means that if there is any proceeding in a criminal court which is taken by anyone, whether it is the intern or any other.
Okay, Mr. Hegre, let me ask you, what should Justice A.K. Ganguly be doing now?
It is not for me to advise Justice A.K. Ganguly.
A charge of sexual harassment against him has been found to be true by the highest court in this country, by a probe panel of the highest court in this country. Should he not be stepping down before the police step in?
That is entirely for Justice Ganguly to decide. It is not for me to advise him. It is also for the West Bengal government, which appointed him, to decide. In case they feel that they cannot afford somebody with a reputation like Justice Ganguly, they should actually start the process for removal through the process of writing to the President of India and seeking a reference. These are decisions between Justice Ganguly, his conscience, and the West Bengal government. I would not presume to offer my advice.
Sanjay Hegre, thank you so much, senior lawyer, for speaking to Headlines today. We also have senior lawyer Indra Jaisingh joining us on the phone line. Indra Jaisingh, as far as Justice A.K. Ganguly is concerned, he's been found guilty of the charges that were made against him. What do you think is going to be the next step?
Two things are very clear. A cognizable offence, prima facie, has been committed under Section 354 of the unamended Indian Penal Code. And I think the law should take its own course. We all know that the police have the power to register a suo motu complaint or an FIR, and that's one course of action. The other, of course, is that I do think that having regard to the position that he holds, he should forthwith step down and resign. This is the only thing that will actually restore the credibility of institutions which are meant to protect the rights of women, including human rights. So I earnestly hope that he steps down. I would call upon him to step down.
But Indra Jaisingh, the question being asked is that should the Supreme Court have taken the matter forward, having found Justice Ganguly guilty of the charges made against him?
Well, I think the Supreme Court has more than done what was expected of the court. And they have actually come to a finding, and they have already given judgments which say that the police have the power to take suo motu action. So when it comes to the Supreme Court of India, I think they have behaved in an extraordinary fashion in the interest of protecting the integrity and credibility of the institution as a whole.
Indra Jaisingh, clearly you would say that this has set a precedent, even as far as the judiciary is concerned.
It has. It has set a precedent as far as the judiciary is concerned. It gives us some hope that there will be some in-house mechanism for dealing with issues of this kind, and also gives some hope that women have a fair chance of their point of view being taken into consideration, being heard, even against the high and the mighty, even against a judge of the Supreme Court. This is what was preventing women from coming forward. But I think the fact that she has been given a fair hearing is something which really creates a precedent.
Indra Jaisingh for speaking to Headlines today. Thank you so much. We also have on the phone line R.K. Anand, a senior lawyer who's joining us. Mr. Anand, clearly this has set a precedence as far as the judiciary is concerned, but many are asking the question that perhaps having found him guilty of the charges against him, could the Supreme Court have gone a step further and suo motu taken cognizance of the charges against him?
See, frankly speaking, in this matter where the complaint discloses the commission of a cognizable offence, the FIR should have been registered by the Delhi Police suo motu. You don't need a sanction of the Supreme Court in this matter.
Right.
And I think that the Supreme Court also committed a mistake in constituting a committee, because the act by a judge was not done in the precincts of the Supreme Court. It is after retirement, done in a hotel premises, which they are not concerned.
Right.
First of all, they should not have constituted a committee. Looking otherwise also, a prima facie finding given by Supreme Court, either way, for or against, would have jeopardized the case of intern and or would have jeopardized the case of a judge. So I feel that that prima facie finding ought not to have been given by the judge. The best thing was that the cognizable offence was made out the moment statement was made by the intern. The case should have been registered and should have been tried like an ordinary citizen is tried. He is denying the allegation. That doesn't make a difference. Police has to go ahead, register a case and do the investigation.
R.K. Anand, thank you so much for speaking to Headlines today. On that note,